I wanted to get this over with as quickly as possible. So the recording is pretty bad because I'm having these thoughts right now, and although I'm stressed, I really want to bring them to you. The reason why I hate autism awareness, or at least the main reason, or rather the most overlapping reason, besides everything else like ABA, MSNG, eugenics, is because they portray autistic people as innocent. For example, in autism awareness circles, you always see autistic people being helped. They always pressure parents and random people, common people, to care for autistic people, which is fair because autistic people are disadvantaged. But they never pressure autistic people to care for everyone else, much less other autistic people. And that is a pretty big problem because that is humiliating. Very, very humiliating. Like, this is actually worse than autistic extinction, which, by the way, is pretty inevitable. And I'll get to that later. It's worse than autistic extinction in some sense, in a certain sense, because if autistic people go extinct, we can at least go extinct fighting hard. But in reality, autistic people are going to be met with the worst fate, going extinct and, being humiliated. I don't know how else to describe it. The threat of autism awareness and behaviorism is that autistic people will be reduced to disabled nothings. Disabled, and not like a creative nothing, like in Max Stirner's literature, but like a real nothing. Someone that's good at engineering, but isn't empathetic. That's what they want autistic people to be. And this is evident by the fact that they say that autistic people are disabled. They say that autistic people are naturally disabled. But they have no plans to make autistic people more empathetic, which in their narrative is strange. Because according to them, autistic people aren't empathetic, do lack communication skills. And aside from ABA, which requires a new level of delusion, they aren't fixing that. I mean, within their logic, they would try to fix autistic people if autistic people really did naturally lack empathy. And there was no social model of disability, there was no double empathy. And obviously, it's wrong to say that autistic people are naturally disabled. In fact, disability in the right context, I argue, is a slur. And certainly not diseased. By their own logic, autistic people should be subhuman. Autistic people should be terrible people at the very least, because of such social deficits, such basics as empathy. And obviously that's a horrible idea. In fact, autistic people, or at least some autistic people, have in fact hyperempathy. And many studies show that autistic people are more likely to do a moral action, although even that is discouraged in the scientific institutions. but that they should portray a lack of empathy to be a bad thing. But they don't, really, because, again, they don't have any solutions. And I say this because organizations like Autism Speaks and Next for Autism would still be horrible, but if they merely followed their own logic, then they would at least have a sense of pragmatism to them. It would be pragmatic. In fact, the only reason why people assume that autistic people are naturally disabled is because it's easy to believe, but nonetheless a pragmatic thing to point out, or at least pragmatic for the first few years that autisticness was a big deal. But nonetheless, innocence is cancerous because it means that autistic people no longer care about what's good or bad or how they can make the best out of themselves. And when I say best, I mean best for others. But autism awareness doesn't do that. In autism awareness, people have criticized me for being vague about what I mean exactly by, autism awareness. But it's complex because it's so simple. Excuse me. Autism awareness is defined by the statement that, or the belief that autistic people are objectively disabled and need treatment and help, or special help. And that seems simple, but at least regarding the first part, that autistic people are objectively disabled, I would still find that very radical or very extreme. But to say that is very confusing because that statement is something that most people believe. And it's really funny that people believe in such a radical idea, but nonetheless, most people do embrace it. However, autism awareness is unique not for what it says, but for what it doesn't say. Like that one sentence, or those one or two sentences I used to describe autism awareness, that's it. They don't tell autistic people how to have children, how to be educated, and I think the results would be pretty terrible anyway. But that would just go to show how flawed autism awareness is as an ideology. And here's my main point. I used to care a lot. I used to care so much that I was actually willing to murder the people of Autism Speaks and some behaviorists. And I don't anymore. I mean, I wouldn't be able to say it anyway because it's legal, but nonetheless, I don't want to kill anyone, and I feel like a coward for not sacrificing myself to fight such an evil enemy, that enemy being the leadership of Autism Speaks. But, excuse me. But I decided not to. And the first reason is because I realized that autism awareness is so weak that it might not interfere with neurodiversity anyway. Of course, autistic people do have to reject the narrative. Autistic people do have to voice themselves. But autism awareness is so weak in the long term that autistic people will just wait for it to rot. And as autisticness is normalized, things will get better. But at the same time, if autism awareness wins, and if autism awareness wins, autistic people will go extinct humiliatingly. And I've realized that it's actually the latter that's inevitable. The improvements by normalizing autisticness will be just for show. It's just so that people will remember that autistic people were, hey, human too, and pretty smart humans as well. Well, or at least people. I don't consider autistic people human because the autistic experience is an alternative humanity rather than humanity as most people think of it. And that's because a lot of concepts don't apply to autisticness, like individualism versus collectivism. In my opinion, personalism versus impersonalism is a dichotomy that makes more sense to autistic people, but I'm off track. I'm very frustrated that I, an autistic person, can't destroy Autism Speaks. And it's a real shame because I hate it more than most autistic people. I mean, I did actually make some progress. Just today, I went to the building, and originally I was gonna just annoy them or make them miserable or something, but interestingly enough, I found that the location in DC was actually closed down. Now, this is a pretty good asset for Autism Speaks as a whole, so seeing it abandoned was a weird sight. But I realized that it must mean that what I've done in the past is so extreme, or was so extreme, that it did actually do some damage against Autism Speaks. Now, it's mostly likely because of that one prophecy I made in, what was it, November, October? Anyway, I made a prophecy that the leadership of Autism Speaks would be killed off, or they would all convert to autistic nationalism. Now, I've made a video why I'm no longer an autistic nationalist, and I admit that the the gods are gonna kill Autism Speaks thing, yeah, that was just me. I wanted to create a self-fulfilling prophecy so that a mob of people will kill the leadership of Autism Speaks. And again, I was in the psych ward for this, and we talked through it so so that I no longer have these thoughts. Again, I'm still salty that I was forced into psych ward, but in there, I stopped having these thoughts, and I no longer want to. Excuse me. I no longer want to kill them. Out of my benevolence and morality, I decided not to kill them. But I am... How do I put this? I am proud in the worst way possible. I am glad that I was so radical, at least, that it, first of all, did some actual damage to Autism Speaks. I saw the DC location was closed, and I guess they might have gotten a new location. I haven't looked it up. But for certain, the old location was closed. Actually, I'm going to look it up right now. Okay, so I found nothing. But anyway, I was very ecstatic that after years of crunching at making videos, I at least managed to do that one actual material thing. Destroy the DC location. Now, I say destroy, that's hyperbolic. But at worst, it means that they'll simply move to another location in DC. And at best, it means that they will not hire some people again. Which I think the unemployment for some people who happen to work there is a small cost for destroying the cultural travesty that is Autism Speaks. And yeah, I'm one of those people that believes that Autism Speaks hasn't changed since 2005, or for that matter 2008 or 2013, because the main ideology is still there, even if they tweaked up a few things. Then again, it is probably worse because now they're harder to criticize, and it actually does look bad if you criticize them now. But nonetheless, I did manage to become a legitimate ID. That was my watch. I did manage to become a legitimate threat, but I also came very close to actually, how do I put it? How do I put this? I came very close to legitimizing the autistic nationalist ideology. And at the time, I was an autistic nationalist. Or, I came very close to legitimizing the autistic, radical autisticist, alternate diversity ideology. Because if it's a threat, it's going to get media attention. And media attention means that it is within a pseudo-Overton window, which is the range of ideas that society presents, but doesn't necessarily allow in normal conversation. Things that the media and mainstream people would talk about, but not actually support or allow or tolerate. And yeah, it would have been negative, but at least there would be radical neurodiversity, as opposed to now where almost no one believes in it. Almost no one believes in it, much less normal neurodiversity. However, this victory was sort of the end. That was the culmination of a year of effort. And again, I was so ecstatic that Autism Speaks was shut down, or at least the location was shut down, that I tried to sing Red Army is the Strongest and record it in celebration. But the security came before I could memorize the lyrics. But nonetheless, it was satisfying enough for me. I became the ultimate radical, the most far autistic. You know, there's far left, there's far right. I may have been the most far autistic person on earth because my words turned into actions. And now that I'm an autistic futurist, I kinda want to be radicalized in a new direction. Because the only thing that could be more radical than autistic pride, to the extent that I believe that, to the extent that I almost killed someone, albeit with a bunch of politicians, but nonetheless, now that I reached a conclusion before becoming an autistic fascist, or something worse than autistic nationalism, I want to accelerate to a new conclusion, because to be autistic and proud is nice, but it can only exist holistically. And I'm moving on, or at least regarding this channel, I'm moving on to a new type of content, and I think it's probably the content that I always wanted anyway. I actually don't know exactly what I'm going to make, but it's now that I've gotten most of my ideas out, I feel satisfied, or at least more satisfied than I have been for the last years. And this video has been very, very incoherent, hasn't it? Like honestly, you probably clicked away. You probably don't even want to watch this. But nonetheless, I'm glad that I can at least get these ideas out, because they've been boiling in my head for so long that I really just want to say them without any context, or at least disregarding context. Because it took so long, you know? It took so long. I've been doing this YouTube shtick for about a year now, and I haven't made any progress, except for a little bit. But nonetheless, didn't make any progress. Oh, and if you're wondering what, autistic futurism is, it's basically like Italian or Russian futurism, but not a futurism of technology, but rather a futurism of culture and ideas. So it basically means that autistic people should sort of disregard old ideas regarding autistic people, and basically all old ideas, because almost every one of them, or at least autistic people, should reject almost every old idea about autistic people, because they all come from bourgeoisie neurotypicals that either have never talked to an autistic person altogether or are just unempathetic in general. Also, to be frank, I feel like hurting myself. I feel like I should never be happy again. Because, first of all, for half of my life, up to this point, I've been doing absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Mostly just playing the same song from like Toho or Undertale over and over again. Playing video games. Masturbating. Which my parents warned me about. But I was never responsible enough to force myself to get a girlfriend and get a good job, which my brother, for reference, already has both. And he's much younger than me. What is he like? I think he's 17, I'm 20. I really feel guilty because at the very least I haven't been living up to my own standards. I did try to kill the leadership of Autism Speaks, which I don't anymore anyway. I definitely don't think that's pragmatic anyway, because, well, radical autistic pride would get more attention. It would be negative attention and would probably make things worse in the long term. But nonetheless, I have thoughts about creating some sort of empire or new social movement that is based on hard work and sometimes technocracy, sometimes personalism, or I don't know actually. The point is that I often have thoughts about starting wars, starting conflicts, starting new works. I don't know what the work equivalent to war is, but let's just say that I have thoughts about doing things that do make people suffer, but are for the greater good. But I think it's selfish to think about doing things that make other people suffer, especially, or how do I put this? There's very specific thoughts are in my head. Very specific. I want to describe this right. Look, I'm kind of ashamed that I've thought about doing stuff like Star Wars, but I never tried to fight myself or try to go on a suicide mission by myself. I feel ashamed that I'm not as hardworking as other people. Or rather, I'm ashamed that I'm as hardworking as the average American. Or aren't more hardworking than the average American. I am ashamed that I'm only as miserable as other people, because real praxis requires misery. Real praxis requires blood, requires teeth, requires your life. And I haven't been putting that in. So I've been thinking about not making people overwork, encouraging people to work less for more money, to encourage people to be more cowardly for more for more enjoyment, stuff like that. Because I'm the one that should be suffering. I'm the one that should be in pain because I'm me, and I care about meaning more than happiness. I've always liked to say, man does not strive for happiness, only the Englishman does that. And so, I'm gonna end off, or probably end off, by saying that I do have thoughts about, not suicide. And to be clear, I don't plan on committing suicide or really hurting myself, but I have thoughts about never feeling happiness or joy or anything you would say would be pleasurable or a feeling that people want ever again. I've been considering living my life, the rest of my life, miserably, most miserably, but to the maximum production. Perhaps for example, I could be a workaholic and donate to the soup kitchen. I could start a family, so my children would at least be happy. I could refuse to masturbate, but increase my libido anyway, so that I'm tied to a particular person or particular set of people. In the past, Jewish people have suffered the Holocaust. Right now, kids in Yemen are starving, and autistic children are being killed at the JRC. And autistic people that aren't like me in the future, and like, I don't know, 21 to 52. Autistic people are probably going to be extinct by then anyway, but my point is that those types of people, I don't suffer as much as them. You know, I'm coddled, pampered by warm showers, by this nice bed over here, and I'm speaking as myself. I am ashamed of that. I'm not going to shame others for enjoying their luxury so long as it's modest, so long as it's reasonable and they do try to be minimalist and unmaterialist. But I'm speaking as myself. I say those things, but I'm worried that it's all going to become ironic, hypocritical, or something else like that altogether, making those words meaningless. But anyway, if people can get off the Holocaust, I can pull myself together. I can do whatever it is I dream. And it'd be selfish if in my dream I was happy because of what I did to other people, because of the resources I wasted. Again, I'm not encouraging anyone else to become miserable, because that would ruin the altruism. But I am trying to describe myself, or what I consider becoming.